Welcome to the Ocean Biosciences program's admissions demystification session. I'm Ryan Heckinger. I'm the director of the overall program. It means I herd the cats and everything with all the faculty. And what I'm going to do first is actually not demystify anything about the admissions program first. What I'm going to do is give you more of an overview about the program, make you more comfortable with it, maybe even excited about applying. And then after that, after about 25 minutes or so, you will all break into a marine biology or a biological oceanography specific curricular group specific session to get more details directly on the admissions process. So let's just go ahead here. Yeah, it's working. Everybody sees the screen okay? I should confirm that you're seeing right now. Okay, good. So this is the general outline of what I'll cover here. What is the program, who we are, and what are some of the major resources we have in the program for you. So first off, trying to figure out the best way for me to do this here so I can actually see you while I see my slide. So first off, we're talking about the Ocean Biosciences program. That's this area right here on the bottom. Scripps is a big place, and it's divided into these different general research areas. And it's so big that we're then even divided into the educational part and the research part. Now, when I say divided, this doesn't mean that the people are divided, right? So the biology researchers aren't separate from the biology the people involved with the education. It's an administrative breakdown. So there's one person, because we're pretty big, there's one person who is in charge, for instance, of the biology section, the research arm of biology. And then I'm the person who's in charge of the educational program too, period. And this is what we're focusing on today. The thing you should understand is that faculty are not in this camp or that camp. We're in both. Grad students are in both, but the educational program has an administrative, section here or a program, and that's what you are applying to. But the people you're working with and everything, they're going to be up here in the biology research section as well. Like I said, it's an administrative breakdown so that we can manage things. And so, again, there you go. So we have two curricular groups. There's the marine biology curricular group, and there's the biological oceanography curricular group. And faculty usually are in one of those groups or the other, but many faculty will accept students going through one or the other. And so in general, marine biology, it's a big thing. Anything that has to do with biology in the ocean, we can call it marine biology. It's that simple. So it's spanning everything, right? Cell bio, subcellular biology, chemistry, biological chemistry, development, physiology, genetics, behavior, full on, organismology and ecology and evolution. And right now, there's each of these groups, by the way, has a coordinator and or an advisor for the grad students. And Dee Lyons is the person who's coordinating the MB curricular group right now. Within, by the way, marine biology, we have this major track, marine chemical biology. Some of you may be looking at faculty in that track, and they're focusing on marine biology at the chemistry biology interface. Traditionally, most of the work there's been dealing with like pharmaceutical or drug discovery and natural products discovery in marine organisms, but there's going to be some possible expansion coming up. And by the way, that first part's already a pretty massive and important enterprise. Biological oceanography, it's that curricular group has a goal basically training full-throttled interdisciplinary biological oceanographers. Okay, so what it really is frequently it's marine ecology with a strong tradition on including the physical and chemical environment, like chemical and physical oceanography. And there is often a strong emphasis on going out and doing your work at sea. Again, but there's variability and a lot of people doing things that fit within biological oceanography or within marine biology and vice versa, perhaps. But you will see that they have some, if you look into the details, the biological oceanography curricular group has some different requirements to help ensure that broad interdisciplinary training. It's all written out on and available on the web generally. The coordinator for that group right now is Peter Franks, and then there's a separate advisor, Andrew Barton. This is just a list of the people that accept students into the BO curricular group. I've tried to bold the major biological oceanography curricular group faculty. And by the way, you might notice some of these folks are retired and returned to active duty. They're there, usually not accepting new grad students, but they're there to be, they're still doing research. They may still be available to serve on committees and share their expertise and all of that with you. So, and maybe some of them are accepting grad students as well. I think actually some of them are. And so you should definitely make sure you reach out to them if you find the prospects of working with them interesting. I will also note that we have what I call faculty here. We mean these professors, but we also have these researchers at SIO that are principal investigators. They tend to teach less coursework than the professors. They have lower teaching duties, but they still take on grad students and they do research, obviously, and are definitely available for consultation and all that, serving on committees and everything. You should, of course, what is going on here? This is just an example of some of the newer folks that have joined the BO curricular group in recent years. And again, you should be just, looking these people up as you probably already have online on the websites. When you're looking for possible labs to join, you've probably already been doing that. The marine biology, given that it is broader, you might expect it has more names here. And again, there's a lot of people here. You have a lot of players to choose from and see who might serve as a good home for you as a student. This is just some of the newer folks that have joined the marine biology curricular group in recent times. And I'll mention, Lisa right here is going to be actually running the marine biology curricular group specific session right after this original or this orientation part that I'm doing. We just added these folks down at the bottom just this year, actually, April and Diana and Ricardo here. Right now we're actively trying to also recruit another person into the marine chemical biology section, a senior researcher. It would be really excellent if we can get her here, but the question marks are still on that. She came and she's a top candidate. We're trying to get her here. She studies venom, by the way. All these sorts of interesting chemical things involving venom. So now we're switching, just again, if look these folks up online. This list is here, just lets you kind of have an idea about the numbers of people that are here to serve as advisors and the kinds of research going on. Definitely do some checking them out online, not in a creepy way, right? You're checking out their research profiles and everything on our websites and look at their papers and everything. So resources that are here at Scripps for people in our program. Two important resources, by the way, are these research seminars. These are seminars where we invite people from the outside typically, and sometimes internally, who come and give like a 50-minute talk about some major research. And it is a way for students to, and also faculty, to keep on the edge of things, keep understanding what's happening in cutting edge science, and learning about what other people were doing. It's also a way, by the way, if you notice up here, I say that they're run by the graduate students. So the grad students in each curricular group get together and will run and pick and invite the actual people who are going to come and present at these seminars. And so we have these two different seminars. One's called marine biology, one's called ecology, and they're happening usually every week during the quarter. They're good things to go to. You will see that there's little flyers that will be posted and also passed around to you when you're here. And you can pick and choose what ones you go to. I always recommend to students, go to at least one seminar a week, whether it's related to your research or not. In fact, it's often more important to go to the ones that aren't related to your research, because you know what's happening in your field. You're paying attention to all the time. These other people can help broaden your horizons in ways that you might not have expected. And this is true for all of us, by the way. Just another example of a flyer. Sometimes we're able to get people from far away. A lot of the time we're tapping into West Coast people. You know, it depends on the kind of what's going on with the travel budget and everything that year. Of course, during COVID, when we did Zoom, we really were able to get people from around the world. So we're now back to doing in-person seminars, though, which is good. There's another type of research seminar thing that we have here in the, we just started this up a couple of years ago. We have graduate students presenting their research to each other. It's a pretty nice seminar series. It helps make sure that you're up on what all of your peers are doing, and you're sharing, and which is, by the way, you might think you might just kind of know that because you're hanging out with each other, but you know, we're a pretty decently sized place and you may not be hanging out with each other. And so it's a good way to see what's going on in other labs, and also to learn how to do presentations better. And learning from your peers is actually one of the real important things about grad school. One of the places where that happens is in these sorts of seminars. And there's other sorts of seminars too, which are really useful for, and maybe useful for you. We already had enough with those two biology ones here at SIO, but the other curricular groups in those other areas of research and education at SIO often have things of massive interest for us in biology. They often are biological. And so you always can pay attention to what else is happening in other parts of SIO. Sometimes there's interesting talks happening up the hill at the NOAA facility, that the Southwest Fisheries Science Center. And also upper campus. We call it upper campus because it's up on top of the hill, right? The general campus of UC San Diego. They, you know, there's a biology division. Now it's actually a School of Biological Sciences, I think. And this is a department, and that there's a department of biology. They just did some restructuring, but there's some really good, you know, ecology, behavior, and evolution seminars. Then there's more of a cell developmental molecular biology. But I believe now it's a department of biology. They post seminars. You can get on those lists and keep track of what's happening up the hill. And we have shuttle buses that you can take up there to go to their seminars a lot of the time. And that, it also bears mentioning that the scientists at the Southwest Fisheries Science Center, they often are excellent collaborators for research that people might want to do, that you may want to do as a PhD student. So it even pays off to look at what the people are doing up there, because you may be really interested in the sorts of things they're doing. Some of them are even adjunct SIO faculty, which means they can personally accept students into our program and be the main advisor. And yeah, they could be the main advisor. And even if they're not your main advisor, somebody up there could be on your committee, and perhaps even for sure an unofficial co-advisor, and maybe even an official co-advisor. So it bears, again, just checking out what's happening up there. Even and now, during the application process, but even after you're here, just see what's happening up there. There might be some sort of thing that you'll find very interesting, a person you might find interesting to at least talk with. It just increases, the pool of resources that you have here in terms of people doing science. Here's another sort of a different type of resource, these experimental aquariums that we have at SIO. We actually have right now operating 2 large experimental aquarium rooms, and we're improving them all of the time and dealing better. They're typically flow through, and so we're sucking water up from the ocean. We're getting better and better at how we can modulate the water temperature and other attributes about it. The chemistry and everything, temperature, acidity. We're also right now coming up with a 3rd facility that's nearly done. It's in a brand new retrofitted building, and it's going to be another gigantic experimental aquarium room that is just going to have really top-notch capabilities for doing experiments and other sorts of research. We also have a pretty incredible scientific diving program. Yeah, it's the oldest. It's definitely one of the most largest and most active scientific diving programs in the nation. And it trains and supports students, PIs, technicians in how to do research scuba diving. It is something that you can take part in when you are a student here. You can get research scuba certified. You can use it in your research. You can open up doors to doing research downstream afterwards by getting trained with this here. It's a pretty major resource to take advantage of if you think there's any chance of wanting to employ scuba in your research. Kind of related to that, we also have a bunch of small boats that permit doing near shore work. Often you can go out there and do the scuba diving off of the boats. And there's formal training that we have with the small boats. You can lower them off at the end of the pier and go out the kelp forest and do this, or into shallow subtidal waters, or use them in other ways. I use a small boat all the time in estuaries, and we do our best to actually make these available for grad students free of charge. And I think so far we're still able to, I see Erica nodding his head that we're still able to pull that off. So this is something pretty grandiose. So SIO manages a really major oceanographic research vessel fleet. These are, sometimes people tell me, don't call them boats. These are ships. They're not those little boats off the end of the pier, which are wonderful tools for certain things. These are full-on ocean-going ships. And they're also, students are highly supported. Like, you can actually apply for and get funds to have your own ship time. We use them in classes and we use them for research. And it is, SIO manages, it's actually a service that SIO does for the nation, because they're not only available for us, but they are here and available to us, of course. They're actually all housed in the nearby San Diego Bay. Another major resource. We also have something else that is really interesting. So a lot of you might think about museums, and you probably think about the public display part of it. Some of you might realize that museums actually have another major part to them, which is the collection side, the part that's behind the scenes, where we actually have researchers in museums, like say the LA County Museum of Natural History, or the San Diego one, or the American Museum of Natural History, the Smithsonian, right? They all have curators who are actually investigators, scientists who study the organisms that they're in charge of curating. And we ourselves here have pretty substantial museums, the collection side of it, these collections of marine invertebrates, which is really fishes. We have another one on pelagic invertebrates, the benthic invertebrates. We also have some geology type of and microfossil, a major collection here. And the dredged rocks also fits into the geology section. Each of these collections has a curator who is faculty, and part of their job is to serve as curator of this, and a full-time collections manager, like as a staff that manages the collection. These are actually serious collections, and not just little small things that we happen to accumulate. Here's a map that can kind of let you see. This is already several years old, but you can see how many these points, every single one of these points, it indicates where a certain little lot or collection came from around the world. And you can see that it's quite extensive. There's a chance that our pelagic invertebrate collection may be the largest such collection in the world. I'm just not remembering right now. But the main thing is, largest or not, these are all quite substantial and continuing to grow. We just had a meeting recently about how we need to probably build a new building to house our growing collections. So what are these collections good for? Well, first off, we use them in teaching all the time, whether it's undergrads or graduate instruction. Perhaps equally or more interesting to you is people use them to do research, including students. So they are majorly used to do PhD and master's student theses. And we have postdocs that use them. And of course, we have visiting faculty that come and use them, just like people use other museum collections. Of course, here they have a high extra and inordinate amount of use by students at our facility that take advantage of doing it. I'd like to mention some of the collections, by the way, are somewhat unique, and because we've been archiving ecological samples taken every year for decades. Most of the time, museums are a little more ad hoc. They have some collections from here and there, but we have some things where they've come from systematic sampling of, say, the fish community or the plankton community every single year for decades. And you can do some really interesting historical ecology or whatever sorts of work. You can look back in time, basically, and answer all sorts of interesting questions that you frequently have a hard time doing at typical museum collections. So I will have time to answer a few questions about anything that I just shared, but right after that, we'll go ahead and break up into the curricular group specific sessions that Colleen Petrick, she's a professor here, will be leading the biological oceanography one, and Lisa Ziegler, a research PI here, principal investigator here, will be leading you on the marine biology curricular group one. And both of these people, by the way, are chairing the admissions committees this year for those curricular groups. That's why they're going to fill you in a little bit more on the application process. So does anybody have any questions for me? I think I can see it. You can undo your microphone and start talking, or you can try the hand raising icon, which I think I would see if it popped up. And if not, okay, I see. Go ahead there, Filippo.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for the introduction. I just want to have a question about the application process and the emphasis on the personal project to do which we need to find a supervisor compared to the teaching. Just because I come from Europe where there is a different teaching system. So could you just describe what emphasis is put on the teaching compared to the individual project that you do with your own supervisor?
So perhaps for some reason, I'm not following. There's an emphasis. What do you mean by emphasis on teaching?
I will give you an example. For example, looking at the website, it seems like you really need to have an idea of what project you want to do, contacting the supervisor. Whereas here in Europe, it's more like you undergo some teaching and then you brainstorm with a professor.
Oh, you mean you take some classes, you mean, like the courses? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, because for us here, the most important thing in our program and a lot of other programs in the United States, not all of them, you're generally admitted into a lab. So you are truly technically admitted into a program, but the thing is, as we emphasize on the website, usually a particular advisor admits you into their lab. And that's why it really pays off to have a pretty good idea as to what sort of research you want to do. You want to make sure that there's some sort of lining up between you and the prospective advisor. Now, most of the time, it's not like you have to have a PhD dissertation lined up beforehand. In fact, that is probably happening 1 out of 1,000 times. Normally, there might be some general idea about an area, but normally people really figure out what they're doing specifically for their PhD after they're here, and they have taken some classes and interacted more and studied more and read the literature more and talked a lot more with their PI. So the emphasis is on having, making some sort of connection with the principal investigator. And also there's another thing in America, which is unfortunate, but the principal investigators, the advisors, typically have to find the money to pay for, unless there's a fellowship that the applicant has, we have to find the money to support the PhD student. That's particularly happens at SIO. Some places they can do teaching assistantships to support themselves, but there's a lot less of that going around here. And none of us like it, but it's the way it is. And it's actually a limitation on even how many students we can accept, because we just have to find money for them. And it's coming out of our research grants typically. So that's where you got to have some sort of relationship typically with the PI. If you have your own fellowship, that can help open the doors a little bit more to perhaps say, there are 2 labs that I really like, and they both are interested in me, and I can rotate between them and then solidify what lab I want to stay in. That's another possibility. It's rarer, but it does happen. Okay, does that help?
Okay, thank you. And that is the same both for master's program and PhDs?
Yes, it's definitely true with the master's program. Yeah,
okay.
So we call that direct admission, where you're admitted into a lab. It's the clearest way to think about the reality of how this typically works. So even though there's still a program that you're coming into, or a CG you're coming into, that does an assessment of everything, it still requires the ability and the interest of usually an individual advisor, maybe a couple, to take you into the fold, basically. The ability and interest. Ability is key. We often have the interest, but not the ability, which is the sad state of affairs.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Aradana, I think I saw a hand, but it disappeared. There we are. Okay. It's jumping around. I'm not sure the rhyme or reason for where.
I hope I'm
hey there. I can barely hear you. Now you're disappeared vocally.
Am I audible right now?
Now you are, yes.
Yeah, here. Thank you for the introduction. It was good. And just I had one doubt about the programs. You told that biological oceanography was more of interdiscipline, right?
Well, in terms of being integrative, what you might call integrative oceanography. So, right, you're doing biology, but it is integrated typically with physical and chemical oceanography. That's the main difference that I've been able to identify, and it's the stated difference with the biological oceanography curricular group compared to marine biology.
So,
but you can do all sorts of other interdisciplinary work that fits outside of that sort of fold.
So I think there's also scope for people who are in biology to join the biological oceanography.
For sure.
Yeah,
yes.
because my undergraduate was completely in biology. So, and my master's degree was also in biology. So that's why I had it.
Yeah, there's lots of flexibility there, and you can talk with your prospective advisor about what makes the most sense for the curricular group that you would like to go into, and you can get a pretty good flavor by seeing what the requirements are for getting a PhD in each of them. Those are all online, and then seeing what kinds of research the main faculty that are in each of those curricular groups. And again, biological oceanography, you will see a certain flavor, even though there's a diversity of research, but there is a tendency for it to emphasize what I mentioned. Okay.
Yeah. I have one more question for you. Like I checked out the requirements for biological oceanography, and the marine biology courses. And for biological oceanography, I think for the marine biology courses, it was mentioned as we had to have 2 years of chemistry or organic chemistry. I think it mentions our undergraduate, right?
Usually, yes.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
didn't have exactly chemistry or organic chemistry, but I did have soil science and agricultural chemistry. Would that be
Yeah,
fine?
those sorts, I wouldn't probably, but those requirements are there. And let me say, we can often break rules. And so in that case, I would check with Gilbert Bertato, who is the main department grad student, like the person who knows these rules, and also the prospective advisor. Like, because if they might just say, I'm sorry, come back when you take that class, or they might say, oh, that's totally fine. You can just read this book when you come here. So there's ways to, some of these rules are definitely breakable, but it's good for you to know what those are so that you can talk about the possibility of breaking them.
So in case
Okay.
in case my course that I did in my undergraduate is not applicable, so is it okay if I take a course out of my curriculum right now and then from there?
Probably. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. If people taking courses before they get here, if you have the course, that counts. It doesn't have to have been during your bachelor's degree, for sure. People do that sometimes to fill in holes so that they are more prepared to enter the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I could easily keep fielding questions for a while, but we really need to move on to Lisa and Colleen's section. So Gilbert, you have made separate breakout sessions, or how is that going to work? Can you handle that, Gilbert?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and open the breakout room. So they're titled Biological Oceanography and Marine Biology. You should be able to join whichever one you want. So go ahead and do so. You're free to jump between rooms if you'd like. And if you have any trouble getting into a room, just let me know and I can assign you to it.
Yeah, and I'll just say, don't stress out about picking the right room. Just go to the one that you think probably fits, and you're going to learn a lot of the same sorts of things in each of them. Like, so don't worry about them being simultaneous. You're going to miss something great in the next one. Okay.